So for my center back, the continuation of the HBL line is all the way. And what I did, I came and measured my back skirt on my HBL, making sure it's perfect. So this is the this is where it ends, right? And I just did a little marking. So on the back, so I can have a little bit of difference from the front to the back. I did some short little lines, right? So this is my seam allowance, and this is my seam allowance, right? This is my center back. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did on the front. It's always repetitious, nothing different. So, but at this time I already add my 7/8 seam allowance. 7/8 just because we're going to do overlapped zipper. It's 7/8. If you're not doing an overlapped zipper and you're doing like invisible zipper, the invisible zipper only needs half of an inch, right? Half of an inch seam allowance. So what I did here on this area, because I have my center line, that's my seam allowance. Now, that's my cutting line. Let me move the paper a little bit. This is my cutting line, right? So this is, once I cut it from here, I'm going to separate the skirts. I like to do it this way because in pattern making, this is the way we draft the skirt. And I like to keep everything together so it would be less confusion, right? So this is my cutting line. This is my seam allowance. Let me point it. So this is my cutting line, seam allowance, and seam allowance for my back. This is my center front and this is my center back. So I'm gonna come again and I'm gonna match my side seams, my cutting lines, and then I'm gonna make sure my HBL is perfect to the HBL on the paper, and I have my seam allowance perfect. So then I'm gonna weight down the skirt. I'm gonna weight down the skirt so it will move, and that's gonna smooth it. I'm not pulling, because if I pull, every time you pull fabric, it goes off skewed. It always goes off the grain, right? And remember, in draping, we never pull, we always smooth. So I'm gonna smooth out, and then I'm gonna weigh it down, and then I'm gonna do the same thing on the front, making sure my front line. See, and I forgot to continue my line all the way up. So I don't know, I'm gonna move the paper because right now the paper is just on the very edge of my cutting table, and I don't want to mess it up, right? So I'm going to continue my line, and I'm gonna continue it higher than what I need, right? So I'm gonna do my seam allowances first. So this is my seam allowance, and then now I'm gonna do this is my sewing line. Sorry, I got a little bit confused there. So sewing line, and this will be my cut line, or my cut line. So I'm gonna go higher than what I need, right? 7/8 of an inch. This is for the zipper. So then I'm going to make sure my skirt, my drape skirt, matches my center back line, and then I'm gonna weigh it down. I'm gonna smooth it. Right? I'm gonna smooth it, and I'm gonna weigh it down. Cool. There. Alrighty. Again, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did to my front. I'm going to mark my dart points, right? My dart points, and then I'm going to mark. I'm gonna mark my darts. One dart leg, middle, another dart leg, middle. Remember, I don't need to mark all those lines that I have inside the skirt, only the HBL and the seam allowance. The seam allowance are not necessary to be marked, but if you like, I like to mark mine. That way it will remind me exactly how much seam allowance it has instead of me trying to guess, right? But on our pattern card, this is our pattern card, right? In our pattern card, we can write all that information that we need for the skirt. This is not necessary for us to do right now because it's just the beginning. But for the final project, I'm gonna require one of these, and I'm gonna give you one. I'm gonna give you some or one or whatever, just so you guys can start practicing on it. It's nice to start to do all this work at the beginning, just for at the end you'll be able to. It will be easier. It will flow easier, right? Okay, so I already marked the end of my darts, on my dart points, the length of my skirt, right? Because this is going to be just a straight line, and then we're going to add seam allowance. And then on the top, I'm just going to mark where my waist line is. And remember that it's very important for you guys to mark all the little details on the waist, because once you remove your muslin, then everything kind of erases, right? Because it will be just flat. Alrighty. Okay, and the waist and the hip. Cool. So I already have all the markings that I need. My length, my waist, my darts, hip, center, back. So I'm gonna remove my muslin. Removing the muslin. And of course, it just lines and stuff. Alrighty, so remember that before we drew the waist, we need to square off from the center front going into the waist. The back is 1 inch and the front is 1/2 inch. All this information is on the book, so this is just for you guys to see it, and it will be helpful. But if you have a question or there's something that you really don't understand, go back to the book. And of course, the book it says it one way, and then I say it the other way, right? But it's good to have the book. The book is very good. I love the book. Alrighty. So then I'm going to do 1 inch square in. Right? I'm gonna take it all the way to my seam allowance. Right. So there's my 1 inch marking. So now I'm gonna true the waist, and then I'm gonna true the darts. I don't know if you guys can see, but I have my dart point right there, and I have my dart point, and of course on the front I'll have it as well. So let's see. Okay, so now I'm gonna come from I don't need to draw the center line, it's up to you, but I'm gonna ignore it this time, right? Because I'm not gonna fold my paper anymore. It's already there. So I'm gonna go once. I'm gonna make my dart points bigger, the hole bigger, just because I'm gonna use pins to know exactly the bust point. On the industry, they usually use they call drill holes, but they don't do it at the end of the dart. They always go up 1/2 inch, but it's more home use, so I like to go all the way to the end. Yeah, so this is more home use, fashion industry. They go up half an inch because the seamstresses will know exactly how to turn it, how to sew it, and do all that. Alrighty, so for my waist, let's see if I can turn this a little bit more. There you go. Alrighty, so for my waist, I'm just going to follow my my pencil. I think I did this too low. I'm gonna raise it up a little bit just because it didn't match my my waist, right? Okay, so that's my inch, and I'm just going to start truing my waist, blending my waist. Right? I'm gonna do this before I can add the seam allowance. Then I'm going to go down. It's very important for us to follow exactly how it is on the draped. That way, when it's time to sew, it will be just perfect. So I'm just going to erase some of those dots. And then this one right here, it will come to right there. It's too much going up and down, but that's the way it is. And 17 and a half. So then the point of my hip was 17 and 1/2. So I'm gonna follow that, so it will match. Seventeen and 1/2. So that's my hip line. So I'm gonna go back with the marker, so it will be a little bit bigger. There you go. So 17 and 1/2. I'm gonna erase the pencil just because I wanted to make it look more professional, right? 17 and 1/2 to the front. I'm gonna do it now too because I'm here. 17 and 1/2. I'm gonna use my marker, and then I'm gonna erase those little dots. Right. So from this point, this is my cutting line. So now I need to add my sew line, right? So this is going to become my sew line, and then I'm gonna add the seam allowance. To add the seam allowance is 1/2 of an inch. So I'm just gonna go up. I'm gonna do with my pencil, because that way if I make a mistake I can erase it. 1/2 of an inch. 1/2 of an inch. 1/2. 1/2. 1/2. And then again, I'm just going to connect the dots, right? Here to here. Got a little bit confusing here, so I'm going to do a little marking to make sure I have the right on going up. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little marking here too to see how high I need to go, because it was kind of confusing there. There, and there. And then of course I'm going to 17 and a half, and then I'm going to continue my seam allowance all the way to the top. Seam allowance here. Alrighty, so what I like to do here, of course, because I'm going to draw my seam allowances, is just for my information. I don't need to do it, but I always like to have it, right? I always like to have all this information. That way, if I just don't want to be looking for more information, I just look at the pattern, and the pattern will give me all the information that I need. All right, so that's my seam allowance on the side seam, and this is my seam allowance on the waist. And now at the cut line, we need to draw notches. It's very important, those notches, because we need to know exactly where are we gonna fold the dart, right? These are notches. Because once we do all this, the skirt has to match my drape skirt. Has to match it 100%, right? This is going to be my test garment. So we have notches,